Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Today's video is just a quick beginner's lesson on how to cut fabric. So this is a viewer request. Had a lady email me and she was struggling to cut fabric straight and wanted some tips on how to do that. So in this video I'm going to show you how to cut fabric straight with really good quality scissors and also with a couple of different rotary cutters. And also how to cut, and also curves as well, and also how to cut fabric on different styles of or types of fabric. So just your normal regular woven fabric that doesn't have any stretch in it, a rayon, which is very slippery and hard to manage when you're cutting your fabric, and also on a really stretchy, whatever this is, so a really stretchy t-shirting or lycra. It's almost like a lycra, but it's not. So I'll show you how to cut straight lines or straight pieces of fabric with the three different types of fabric and the difference between good quality scissors and poorer quality scissors, or scissors that don't have the best blade on them because you've used them for something else or damaged them. The tools I'm going to be using today to show you how to cut fabric straight and even just how to cut fabric on the curves are a different range of scissors that I have, and also my rotary cutter. So I've got a small rotary cutter which I like to use. This is a 28mm rotary cutter. I use this for cutting curves on armholes, neck curves and things like that when I'm doing dressmaking. The 45mm rotary cutter is great for just cutting long straight lines. I use that a lot in quilting. I actually have a much bigger one as well that I use when I do a lot of fabric cutting. These are Sarah Sharp scissors. Now I have had these are Ever Sharp, but Ever Sharp and Sarah Sharp are very similar scissors. I've had those, I think they're probably about 30 or 40 years old. They get sharpened every few years. So these are the scissors that I actually use when I'm cutting paper, plastics, things like that. So I don't use these for fabric. And then I've got my Kai brand scissors, and these have been my favourite scissors for years. In fact, this pair I've had since 2007, and I only actually got them sharpened 18 months ago. So they're fantastic scissors. Not to be mistaken with the Kai brand. There's a really cheap brand. This is a 7.2 series, so 7250, and then this is a 7.2 something or other, I'm not sure, but they're a different length blade, and one's a little bit narrower and pointier than the other. So I've been using Kai for many years, and these ones are a new shear that I've got from Jack. So this is from the Jack company, and I actually got these for free with a recent industrial sewing machine purchase, but they're actually a really nice pair of scissors. So I'm actually looking at getting a few more pairs of these. Okay, let's get started. Now the reason I have included these in this video is because these are blunt, and I just want you to see how blunt fabric will affect your fabric when you're cutting as well. Now most of the time when you're cutting fabric, you're usually going to be cutting 2 layers of fabric. If you're doing dressmaking, often if you're doing quilting, your quilting fabric is already folded. It's also a great time-saving way of cutting your fabric. What I've done here is I've just gone and drawn a straight line with my ruler just to show you how straight we're going to cut this. So to start, when we're cutting fabric, we don't want to be looking at the actual scissors when we're cutting. So if I'm going to cut, I have the blade of my scissors resting on my table. So when I'm cutting, I'm not cutting with my scissors up in the air like this. I'm cutting with my scissors resting on the table. So the bottom of your scissors wants to be resting on the table, and then you can just start cutting. Now you're better to take big cuts, so take a big bite of your fabric, and looking at the tip of your scissors, look at where you want to go. So I'm not coming all the way down, but I'm opening my scissors all the way looking at the top of my scissors at where I actually want to go. So keep your scissors resting on the table and watch the tip of your blade. So you want to watch the end point. If I cut this fabric just watching the line or where I want to cut, I find that I'm doing much smaller cuts, and you can see that I've actually gone off the line here. So it's actually much easier to watch the tip of your blade when you're cutting. Now that's cutting fabric with really, really good scissors. I've barely used these at all. These are just a beautiful scissor. There's a lot of weight in these, and I do like things that are a little bit more weighty. I don't like my scissors too light. But these are my trusty old Kai scissors that I've been using for many, many years. If I draw another straight line, and again I'm resting my blade on the table, now these scissors actually have a little bit of a nick in them. I ran over them with a pin a long time ago. Now I'm showing you what happens if you use blunt scissors. So when you're using blunt scissors, no matter how you cut this, how you hold your scissors, if you hold it properly, hold it in the air, do long cuts, short cuts, you're going to chew your fabric. So these are blunt, and you can see how it just grabs the fabric there. Now it's cutting, and it just chews up the fabric like that. So it's actually really bad for your fabric, especially if you're working on sheer fabric, chiffons, rayons, even your stretch fabric, because it can cause runs. So that's how you cut fabric on just a normal woven piece of fabric. This is without any stretch in it. Now if I wanted to cut curved edges with my scissors, it's easier to do, but you've just got to be careful and go slow, and don't take big bites out of your fabric. So if I start off here, and I'm just following the curve, and again I'm watching the end of my scissors. So the end of my scissors is actually steering the direction that I'm going. And likewise, if I come along here, forget this line, I can't draw very well. So if I'm doing a neck curve here, I've got my blade resting on the table, and I'm not bringing my blade all the way down, so I'm not closing the tip of my blade completely. And there would be a sweetheart neckline. Now if I'm going to cut curves on fabric, you can use your scissors as I've shown you, but you can also use a rotary cutter. Now with the tighter your curves, the smaller you want your rotary cutter to be. It'll just make it easier for you to manipulate or maneuver around the fabric. You can use the larger rotary cutter if you don't want to have two of them. But if you're doing a lot of dressmaking and you're doing a lot of neck curves, armholes, things with tight corners, get yourself one of these smaller ones. These are fantastic. So open your blade up. Now you've got to be really careful and make sure you're safe all the time. You don't want your fingers in front of your blade because you might slice them. So I'll have my fingers just beside, but my hand is usually following behind the rotary cutter. You need to have a self-healing mat as well. You can't just cut straight on your table. So just follow the line, and you can see how easy this is to cut your fabric on the curve. By far the easiest way to cut fabric straight, especially if you're doing quite a lot of it, is with your rotary cutter and a ruler. So I've got my lines drawn, and all I need to do is line up my ruler on the straight edge there. With dressmaking, you don't necessarily want to do this because you don't have great big long lines, but when you're doing quilting and you want to have straight lines, you'll use a ruler, your self-healing mat and a rotary cutter. When you're cutting straight lines, I'd be using the larger rotary cutter rather than the smaller one because it's quicker. So open up your blade, and you need to have a proper ruler, quilting ruler, rather than a narrow one like this. If I've got this on the table and I'm going along cutting, there's not enough grip for me and safety for me in case I slip and cut my fingers. So you want to have a nice big ruler specific for cutting on mats and with your rotary cutter, and you have your hand, don't have your hand down like this, have your hand up like this so that if you have an accident you can get out of the way quickly. Whereas if you have your hands flat down like that, it has more of a tendency to shift, but also what will happen is that your hand can't get out of the way if you actually slip. So cutting straight, align your ruler along the straight edge, take your blade, your cutter, and you start cutting from close to you and cut away from you. You never cut toward yourself. So cut like that, then just bring your hand up and cut. And then you can slide the ruler up, line it up on the edge, cut and crawl, cut and crawl, like that. So I'll show you that again. So you can do really long lengths of fabric. This is only a short ruler. I usually use one much longer, but for the purpose of showing you how to cut and crawl and move your ruler, you'll just cut, crawl, cut. I can move my fabric slightly or gently. So this is a great way of cutting your fabric straight really quickly, easily, and with minimal errors. Now this fabric is a rayon fabric, so it's very, very slippery. So you'll have this problem with chiffons and silks, rayons, anything that's slippery. So I'm going to show you the difference between cutting with scissors and cutting with a rotary cutter. So again, if I just have my scissors underneath and I look at the point to see where I'm going, it's actually not going too badly here, but because this fabric is so slippery, it has a tendency to move. That didn't turn out too bad, but that's because I've got really, really good scissors. If I'm using my blunt ones, they probably won't even cut. Yeah, they won't cut. So it's really important to have good, sharp scissors. And these ones here, I have a nick in them, so they'll chew up as well. And these are the ones I was using on the woven fabric earlier, so you can see how that's chewing it up because I have a nick in them from running over a pin some time ago. Now, the way I like to cut this particular fabric is with a rotary cutter. So whether you use a small one or the large one, it's up to yourself depending on the curves that you're working with, but this is much easier with the rotary cutter. There's less movement in the fabric because you don't have the blade of the scissors underneath the fabric. And then you can go and cut your curve. Like that. Now we will do some stretch fabric. Now this fabric is a really stretchy, I'm not sure what it is. It's very, very stretchy, as you can see. It's just something that I've got in my stash out the back. I have no idea what I was going to use this for. Anyway, I've drawn a couple of lines and I'm only going to use my good sharp scissors on this one here. So I've got my straight lines drawn, and again my blade is on the base, and I'm taking longer cuts, and again I'm watching the tip of my scissors as my guide. So the tip of the scissors is actually following the drawn line. Likewise, if I wanted to use my rotary cutter, I can just go along on the edge there, on the line, and cut and crawl, cut and crawl, and don't run over your pins. And if we're doing curves, I'll take the smaller cutter out, and I'm following beside or behind the cutting blade because I don't have the safety of the ruler to protect my fingers. Because this fabric shifts, you do need to come up, just smooth it down again. It's really important also to make sure that your blade is sharp. If you've got a blunt blade when you're doing this kind of work, all you're going to do is chew up your fabric and create more danger for yourself. Having a blunt blade will actually cause you to have accidents because you find that you push too hard on your fabric. And having a sharp blade will allow you to cut the fabric just like butter. There we go. So using a smaller rotary cutter to cut curves, a larger rotary cutter with your ruler and your mat to cut straight lines, or using really good quality scissors along the table and watching the tip of your scissors to do straight lines freehand. I hope this video has helped with your cutting skills, and thank you to Cheryl for requesting it as well. If anybody else has any requests they'd like, let me know, send me an email, or I'll pop a link in the comment section down below and I'll see what I can do for you. Catch you next time.